And today we're going to take a closer look at Donald Trump's speech at the 80th General Debate in New York of the UN members. Each speaker has 15 minutes here. But Donald Trump is of course not interested in that at all. And this video is not about UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres bowing to Annalena Baerbock. A very special gesture, at least that's how the mainstream informs us. And it's also not about Emmanuel Macron actually having to walk part of the way back. Why? Because of the Trump convoy. And with that, a warm welcome here to Why Pankritisch with Lil, Think Clearly, Decide for Yourself. Yes, Donald Trump had not complained that the teleprompter did not work at the beginning of his speech. He said, well, God. Whether that's a coincidence is beside the point. I can also speak very well freely. That comes especially from my heart. In the course of the speech, however, everything actually became very easy again. The teleprompter worked and he addressed very many topics here. I was very surprised what he said about Germany or about our current new government, praise without end. You couldn't believe it, could you? Whether that was just tactics or whether he is simply not properly informed. But we'll take a look at that later. At the beginning, of course, he first reported again about this Ukraine war and a lot of self-praise, right? I mean, we know it that way from Donald Trump, right? What actually amused me very much, however, was how he spoke about this Paris climate agreement, right? That was really very, very finely formulated, but all in good time. So first to the topic of the Ukraine war. He said, I have also worked tirelessly to end the killing in Ukraine. I thought that would be the easiest thing because of my good relationship with Putin. But that's not how it worked. Russia wanted to win the war in 3 days and didn't manage it. And now it's been going on for more than 3 years. That doesn't make Russia look good, of course. And then he becomes clear when he says, we've heard that sentence from him more often. This war would never have happened under my presidency. You can see what bad government can do. And on the subject of Gaza, on the whole conflict in Gaza, he also commented, above all, but also regarding the recognition of the state of Palestine. That is, of course, going in the direction of Macron and in other directions. Canada and Australia have apparently also recognized the state of Palestine. Great Britain is apparently also planning to do so. They will probably follow suit soon, and other countries as well. And by the way, Germany has already announced that it will accept the state of Palestine. Trump has a very own opinion on the whole topic. Trump calls the whole recognition of a state of Palestine one-sided and sees it as a possible reward for the Hamas terrorists. He really says, there is peace only with one message. Release the hostages. We want all 20 back, not 2 or 4, all 20. Only then can there be peace. The 38 bodies should also be able to return to their relatives. And regarding the inefficiency of the UN to create wars, or a little more Frieden here, Trump is also quite blunt and clear, because he says, empty words do not solve wars. The only thing that ends wars is action. He certifies the UN with enormous potential, which they would not use, however. At the beginning of his speech, by the way, Donald Trump said, 6 years have passed since I last stood here and spoke to a world that lived in prosperity and peace. Now that time is over. The USA has stumbled into hard times in the 4 years without me. After only 8 months of my presidency, we are the most hip country in the world. This is the golden age of America. So, I mean, he has no problem to pat himself on the back quite often, does he? That must really be stated here like this. Trump later explained why that is so. Food prices have fallen with us. Energy prices have fallen. The only thing that has risen are the values of the stock market. And that benefits all of you here in the room. So he alludes to the fact that some of those present are quite involved in the stock market. And again he rails against the government of his predecessor, right? And highlights the merits of his second term of office here. He really says, I have built the largest economy in the world in the history of mankind in 8 months. So a little exaggerated regarding the Interländer and their energy policy. Yes, he is of course also commenting on that, isn't he? The NATO countries would have procured energy from Russia again, with which a war is being financed. So he's really ranting. For peace, the European countries must participate and take the same measures as we do. They have to do more and try harder to fight Russia. It's really embarrassing what I've learned about the European countries. There must be no more of these energy imports from Russia. They must be stopped immediately. I mean, that's completely clear, isn't it? He would of course like all of Europe to ultimately buy all energy products from the States here, wouldn't he? We Germans have always been very well behaved. We didn't import Russian oil directly here, but ultimately, when we bought oil or gas from the Indians here, it was completely clear that it was basically mostly Russian oil and gas, wasn't it? But well, that was not directly recognizable, only for insiders, logically. On the topic of migration, we know that, don't we? Donald Trump is also pretty harsh, and he also criticizes Europe, so all of Europe and also London in particular. He says the following on the subject of migration. Illegal migration is partly promoted by the United Nations. So illegal migration is promoted by the United Nations. Clear through the whole NGO story. And we have to see how we get rid of the people again. That has to stop now. We have to stop that. So he's really ranting. He also got a bit loud at times. It is unacceptable what has happened. That is not the purpose of the United Nations. However, he also advises other nations, especially in Europe, to deal with the issue of migration as rigorously as the USA would under his administration, otherwise they will destroy their homeland. And he looks again very particularly at London, where such an incredible change has taken place, doesn't it? He was recently with King Charles and certainly noticed that in London. Some people in a country that is not their home want to introduce Sharia. You can't allow that. We are all different. But to preserve this diversity, we must stop something like that. A community of nations that has built a country must protect its tradition, its values. Not thousands can come to us like in a caravan. You just have to make that clear to people. And in connection with migration, he immediately addresses the issue of crime. Many of us know that one is related to the other, don't we? Because he calls criminal immigrants ungrateful, among other things. Therefore, his instruction to reject people at borders was a humanitarian act, as thousands of people died every week trying to immigrate illegally to the USA. That is over now, he says, and by doing so we are saving many lives. Yes, and human trafficking is often associated with migration. He sees human trafficking as truly evil. His government has already achieved a lot in the fight against this human trafficking and would always continue to do so. His government also wants to continue to stop drug cartels that bring drugs into the USA by ship. He literally said, "This uncivilized approach is typical of these criminal gangs. They have become accustomed to remaining unpunished. But we have now used the power of the US military to prevent this. We have told him, we will blow you away from this world." So pretty rough language, right? That's what he is now and then, in all his measures. You mustn't forget that. Yes, now we come to the great topic. Renewable energy, CO2 footprint, climate change and Paris Climate Agreement, right? What does he say about renewable energies? That's a joke. He rants about windmills that are rusting away. Normally, he really says, you should earn money with electricity generation and not lose it. And most windmills are built in China. And then ask the question, do you know what the Chinese use for energy? Even though they manufacture and sell most of the windmills here? Gas and coal. Yes, and now it's about Germany's sick path. Donald Trump sees that in the last government and he praises the current government. I thought I wasn't hearing right? That can't be true. One doesn't know what's going on with Donald Trump in this regard. Has he not been well informed, or does he see this as a strategic measure to praise Friedrich Merz and Germany to the skies here? I don't know, but I really had to swallow twice. Yes, regarding the then decision, i.e. the last traffic light government, regarding renewable energies and also generation, Donald Trump said verbatim, they relied on green, so the traffic light government, and they went bankrupt. That was a disaster. Under Chancellor Friedrich Merz, the Federal Republic had left the sick path in immigration and energy policy. The new leadership came and they returned to fossil fuels and nuclear energy. What good is nuclear energy? Yes, I have what I have not noticed here before. I respect Germany and it is not politically correct what I say, but I don't care. So he seems to know that it's not quite so correct and does not correspond to the facts what he is saying here about Germany, doesn't he? So, I mean, we have no great change in terms of immigration policy and we have no big walls in terms of energy policy either, do we? Here, we continue to rely on renewable energies. Yes, and return to nuclear energy, people. It would be nice if it were so, but there is no talk of that at all. We can't really assume that. But well, nobody is perfect, not even a Donald Trump, far from it. Joe. And by the way, he also considers climate change to be the greatest fraud ever committed on the world. Stupid people said that before and the UN participated. So there he criticizes the UN. The United Nations again. We have to get out of this green fraud again. I said that before and I was right about everything. I hate watching Europe being destroyed by wrong energy policy and migration. You have to change that. Now, of course, he also raves properly against the so-called CO2 footprint, of which Rede would, after that, had been very important a few years ago. And he brings an example from Obama. I knew that, I don't know if you know that, because Obama also talked a lot about the CO2 footprint, how important it all was. But then he flew to Hawaii with Air Force One to play a round of golf, right? And then he flew back again, also with Air Force One, and talked about the CO2 footprint again. That's of course heavy, isn't it? But God normal, how else are you supposed to play golf, somehow? If the golf course is so far away, right? It only works with the Air Force W or some other plane, right? It is total nonsense, he says, to work to reduce the CO2 footprint, as many countries in the world would still strive for. And no matter what you would do, by the way, the wind blows the dirty air from China back over here, and then it is here too. Also, the garbage that was discharged into the water in Asia flows past Los Angeles in 2 weeks. We all see that. And then someone gets into trouble if they flick away a cigarette on the beach. European electricity bills, by the way, are much higher than in the USA and also in China. How can that be? Yes, and that's why the USA got out of the Paris swindle. He means the worldwide climate agreement, of course, doesn't he? He really said we should have paid $1 billion. But I said no, the USA has been exploited by the world for so long. But that's over now. We have coal and oil in abundance. I call it clean, beautiful coal. We can supply every country with affordable energy here. It is interesting that he writes or says here, the USA has been exploited by the world for years. I don't know if the USA hasn't done that with other countries too, or they have even waged wars for oil, in my opinion, right? Yes, and at the end he said a little something about the tariffs, that is just a means for him to counter unfair tariffs here. And then he thanked himself, and instead of 15 minutes, which every speaker actually had available, Donald Trump casually used 55 minutes here, right? As the protocol requires, Baerbock also thanked Donald Trump, of course, but with a super icy look. I think it's remarkable that he ranted so properly, ranted terribly, and of course has no problems at all to simply attack the United Nations here, right? With regard to migration, with regard to renewable energies, that they participated in all the nonsense, etc. And that the United Nations actually had potential, but had done nothing for peace or for peace talks here. Unfortunately, that has to be said, doesn't it? The UN has in no way initiated diplomatic talks between Ukraine and Putin here. Unfortunately, so you really wonder what you need them for, right? You have to say that, quite honestly here, there is not too much to expect from this General Assembly at all from this United Nation. Costs an incredible amount of money. Of course, all states do not bear this from their private coffers, logically, but always nicely from the tax money, so from us, right? But well, that was definitely a comprehensive attack from Donald Trump. I think I've overdone it properly now too. I'll try to cut the video a bit again. At the moment it was not at 21 minutes. Much too long, right? So I'll shorten it properly. I wish you a wonderful day. In any case, I'm always looking forward to your comments and of course to a subscription. Until the next video, have a good time. Bye.